This first full day on the campaign trail for Harris, for Walz, for the ticket. You attended both rallies. Your biggest takeaway, Jeff?
Not a morning person here, so this hour works just fine for me. The day was, I mean, the energy that you hear people talking about on the Kamala Harris campaign trail was absolutely evident today. In both rallies that I attended, the enthusiasm was just really, really present. And I spoke to a bunch of people in the crowds, particularly at the Wisconsin rally, and they're very pumped about Tim Walz being added to the ticket. They think that he can bring a lot to Vice President Harris's campaign. I only spoke to one person who was a little bit skeptical about her ability to win Wisconsin. Wisconsin, of course, is a very critical swing state. And a bunch of the people I spoke to said that they thought that he would help her with that. There were some folks in the crowd who had come from Minnesota. We drove an hour and a half to get there to see him and to see her, of course, and they were delighted. So I can just tell you that the energy is absolutely there. Whether that energy continues between now and November is still a question mark. But certainly people are coming out right now because they're excited on the Democratic side.
Michael Steele, those remarks sort of had it all. It had bio. It set the stakes for this election. There was the enthusiasm from the crowd. I want to know what you heard listening to the vice president and her running mate, and also what you think the response is over at Team Trump Vance as they watch these rallies, this level of enthusiasm and excitement.
Well, they don't have that. The rally that they had last week in Georgia, which preceded the one that Kamala had, didn't go to capacity. There is sort of an energy drain on the Republican side right now. A lot of it driven by the fact that this man that we see standing at the podium there meanders through an hour plus conversation with himself, random thoughts. So after a certain fashion, people get tired of it. They get bored with it because, okay, I'm excited about what? And so that's what Kamala and the governor has tapped into, is this sense of excitement, this sense of hope. I mean, you stop and think about it. We have been living under this cloud of what will happen next? How much worse can it be? And so when you have a candidacy and a campaign that comes together around the idea that we are the ones who are going to solve this, and when we solve it, we'll do it together, it just creates a different kind of energy. And that's just something that Republicans just aren't offering right now. Where's the hope in what they're saying? Where's the opportunity in what they're talking about? It's not there. And so you listen to Donald Trump meander.
John, I'm so struck by Kamala Harris sort of making that argument at the end of her remark, saying they're going to question the results of this election, so let's not give them any reason to. Let's make sure this was a big margin here. Let's see that enthusiasm in the votes as they come in. Your sense of the map as this campaign sees it, given the emphasis that we are seeing right now, John, on the Midwest?
Yeah, I mean, I think as they were in 2016 and 2020, those three big Rust Belt states were, loom larger than anything else: Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin. The Democrats pretty much have to win those three states. You could potentially see Harris winning Georgia and losing Michigan and basically getting the same electoral coalition. Of course, the numbers have changed a little bit since 2020 because of the reapportionment of electors following the last census. So basically, Democrats can, if they can hold those three Rust Belt states in Omaha, Nebraska, they could still lose Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada and win this election. But I think what I would say is, before Joe Biden dropped out, Donald Trump was riding high. And right now he is in free fall. And the question is, where's the bottom of that fall, and will there be a bounce back for him? Right now, I'd look at this election and say it's pretty darn even. But will the trajectory of Kamala Harris, with all this energy behind her, with this contrast of her joy versus the anger that Trump brings, Is that something that's going to continue to boost her, or have we found maybe a stabilization point, or will Trump be able to adjust and move back ahead? I mean, right now we just don't have answers to those questions yet.
Right, and Michael, part of what we're watching then is the Oppo files start to drip out as best they can. And I think this is interesting because if this is the best they've got, for example, the Republican attack on Walz, the lie that he allowed rioters to burn down Minneapolis during the Floyd protests. You have ABC News obtaining a recording of a June 2020 phone call in which then President Trump praised Governor Walz's handling of the situation. Take a listen.
Yeah.
I know Governor Walz is on the phone, and we spoke, and I fully agree with the way he handled it the last couple of days. Tim, it showed the incredible difference between your great state yesterday and the day before compared to the first few days, which was just absolutely. And I blame the mayor. I mean, I've never seen anything like it, where the police were told to abandon the police house, and it was ransacked and really destroyed. Millions and millions of dollars are going to have to go back to fix it. I don't know. You'll have a
if I'm still on, the one thing I would say, I spent 24 years in the Guard. The one thing I would say is that you could do is a lot of people don't understand who the National Guard is, and you need to get out there from a PR perspective and make sure that it's not seen as an occupying force, but it's their neighbors, school teachers, business owners, those types of things. That's a really effective message.
Okay, good. I think that's a good idea.
To note, Michael, NBC hasn't independently verified the recording, but Michael, if that is the best they've got, what does that tell you?
I think you just keep playing that tape over every time J.D. Vance opens his mouth about, how badly the governor, ran matters during that time. Say, well, your running mate didn't think I did a bad job. So that's the problem. I mean, look, the narratives that they're trying to create are basically fundamentally driven by one of two things: the imagination of Donald Trump or just outright lies. And so if that's your space in this political environment where Kamala and Tim are looking at the country forward in a forward vision, it's going to be hard to come back and start tearing that down. People don't want to go back, and there's a lot of value to that proposition. I know that from the strategies that we employed in 2010. I'm seeing the campaign do some of that on the Democratic side in 2024. It is a turning point for a lot of voters when you give them something that they can talk about and hold on to, other than just sit in misery. And then, of course, you have tapes that come out that Donald Trump said, nice things about the Democratic vice presidential nominee.
Well, and Jeff, it's not the only attack that they're trying to lob. You have Senator Vance leading the charge on attacking Walz, including going after his military record. Watch this, and we'll talk about it on the other side.
When Tim Walz was asked by his country to go to Iraq, you know what he did? He dropped out of the Army and allowed his unit to go without him, a fact that he's been criticized for aggressively by a lot of the people that he served with. I served in a combat zone. I never said that I saw a firefight myself, but I've always told the truth about my Marine Corps service. That's the difference between me and Tim Walz.
I don't know if we have the tweet from Secretary Buttigieg where he talks about this attack. Come to think of it, denigrating the worth of a soldier's service based on whether he deployed to a war zone, it's kind of like denigrating the worth of a woman's citizenship based on whether she happens to have children. Jeff, help me understand what Trump Vance are trying to do here.
Well, I think what they're trying to do here is exploit what they think might be a weakness. But the response, both by the Pete Buttigieg, and I would expect probably also from the campaign, is going to be, I think they're just not going to engage. I mean, when you can say I spent 24 years in the National Guard, that's a pretty long number. And I think that what they will come back and say is he did his service, he is patriotic, and in addition to that, he's a teacher. And when he did get out of the Guard, he was running for he was about to run for office or was running for office. My suspicion is that they don't really feel like they need to answer questions like that from J.D. Vance or take criticism like that from J.D. Vance.
John, I want to go back to that sound that we heard from President Biden warning that he is just not confident there will be a peaceful transfer of power if Trump loses. If you are the campaign, how do you bake that reality into the stakes of this election without demotivating voters, from the value of their participation?
Yeah, I think it's a tough balance. And I think there's a tough balance on the Democratic side about how much do they talk about that versus how much do they talk about Kamala Harris's plan for the economy at a time when voters are worried about what the price of groceries are. How much do they talk about her plan for immigration when that's an issue that a lot of voters care about versus, what Joe Biden had staked so much of his campaign on was this defense of democracy idea. But what Joe Biden is saying comes from his experience. He is old enough to remember, as pretty much everyone watching this show is, I assume everyone watching this show is, to remember January 6th, 2021, to remember that Donald Trump did not concede the election, to remember that he fired up his crowd and that crowd went and stormed into the Capitol of the United States to try to stop the transfer of power, to stop the electors from being counted. So this is not something that Joe Biden is making up out of whole cloth or some sort of political concern that he has that's, some sort of red herring or straw man. This is something that we all watched just a few years ago. And so the campaign's going to have to decide what it thinks is the proper balance in terms of highlighting that. I think a lot of the people who are voting Democratic already have that in mind. And we'll see how they deal with it going forward.